Let's make a mask. First, you must cut 2 6-inch by 9-inch pieces of fabric and 2 6-inch pieces of elastic. This elastic is 3/8 of an inch wide. The next step is to pin the elastic to each of the corners at a 45-degree angle. Pin the 4 corners, and then you'll be ready to take it to the machine and tack it in. At the machine, put the piece of fabric with the elastic under the foot, and then go forward a few stitches, back stitch, go forward a few stitches, and back stitch. That will create a tack, and do that on each of the 4 edges. The next step is to pin the piece of elastic onto the piece of fabric away from the edge so that you don't end up catching it when we go to sew into the next step. With the piece prepared, take the second piece of fabric with the right side facing down and put it on top and make a sandwich. Next step will be to sew the 2 pieces together. So start here about 1/3 of the way down on the right side and begin sewing, back stitch, go to the corner, pivot, go across to this side, pivot again up to the top, pivot again, across, pivot and come down and stop about 1/3 of the way down. So begin sewing, back stitch and go forward. When you get to the corner, stop with your needle down, pivot your fabric, and then continue along. And finish the whole way around until you get about 3 inches from where you started, and then you can stop. I've stopped sewing, leaving a gap, and I will use that gap to turn the piece right side out. Through the space, I've unraveled the mask, and now I can unpin the pieces of elastic, and I'm going to flatten this whole thing out and get it prepared to press. After you've opened this up, then you have to press. So you take the iron and just straighten this out and get it nice and flat. And you can see I don't have an ironing board here, so I've just used a cutting board with a kitchen towel over it. So that's as much as you need. Once the piece is pressed, you can begin first and stitch along the edge where the space was, where you turned it, closing that in and stitching it, and then flip and go back to your machine and stitch along the opposite edge. The next stage is to begin the pleats. So you fold up just from the edge about the first 1/2 inch, pinch it and put a pin in the center. Then do that 2 more times. Each set, you can pin in the center to help to keep them in line, and then press the edges so that the pleats are actually pressed down. Once you've done that, I find the easiest way to get this ready to sew is to just tape about 1 inch from the edge. Just tape this down. You can use regular Scotch tape and just tape this down, and then you're ready to go back to the machine to sew. Okay, now that you're at the machine, we're going to put the foot down on the edge, and about 1/4 inch from the edge, we're going to sew a seam. We're going to sew across through the tucks. When we get to the end, we can pivot, sew a stitch or 2, and then pivot again and go back up. This will reinforce that piece. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Remove the tape, and that could be reused if needed. Take out the pins. And finally, your piece will look like this. When it's put over somebody's face, it's going to open up.